So I have 2 left feet. I don't dance very well. But if I were to dance, I would want to stir up the emotions of those who watched King David dance. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. And I don't know if it's because it's Richard Gere or not. I'm much younger Richard Gere. But he's amazing in that movie. King David. I think it's on Netflix. Google it. Check it out. It's an amazing scene where David strips all his kingly robes off and dances in his underwear as the Ark of the Covenant comes into Jerusalem. It's not surprising that his wife, Michal, the daughter of the former king, is a bit chagrined. Whether she wants this man all to herself, doesn't want anyone else looking at that gorgeous body, or whether she's just embarrassed because she thinks he's making a fool out of himself, it's not clear. But there's a backstory here that has David do this riotous dance. You see, the Ark of the Covenant has been lost for many years. It was taken in war. And when it was finally found, David decided it had to come back to Jerusalem. But as they were transporting the Ark, and it was wobbling on its stand, someone reached out to catch it, and immediately they were struck dead. Some power going on here. So the Ark got parked at the home of Obed-Edom, and for a while, there it stayed. Well, Obed-Edom's home was blessed. David said, something wrong with this picture. We got to get that thing back to Jerusalem. So he tried again. And the text you heard this morning was the movement of the ark. A few feet, a sacrifice. A few feet, a sacrifice. David is trying to protect that trip so that the ark will actually make it to Jerusalem. And when it gets there, he dances a dance. This in contrast to the dance of the young 12-year-old girl before the wannabe King Herod. And there's a backstory here too. You see, Herod isn't really a king. In fact, he's ultimately deposed from his throne because he refuses to follow the rulers and thinks he's the ultimate rule. He's one of 4 who is assigned provinces in ancient Israel. This is the one who has Jesus crucified. And some say that this is foreshadowing, that Herod would take the prophet and on the whim of a young girl, chop off his head. Well, a little more about the backstory. You see, John has accused Herod of sin by having an affair with his sister-in-law and then divorcing his wife so he could marry her. But the wife is key. The wife he divorces is key. You see, she was marriage in order to protect an alliance between Galilee, the province that Herod rules, and Egypt, the bordering land. And as soon as the wife is divorced, the Egyptian ruler invades and thousands of people lose their lives. Herod's just a little too big for his britches. And then he calls all the leaders together and, like a king, decides to celebrate his birthday. You know, birthdays were not celebrated like we do today. You know, the kids go to Chuck E. Cheese or hotels or whatever. Every birthday, not just the big ones, every birthday. Not so much back in the ancient world, but kings maybe would celebrate a birthday. So Herod calls them all together, and then this young girl, and this also was extremely inappropriate for a woman to dance in public like that, not to mention a young girl. And Herod is either so drunk or so consumed by lust that he offers to give this girl as much as he can, which is up to half of his kingdom. Well, she didn't know what to do. She's 12 years old. So she goes and asks her mother. And her mother's never had any love lost for John the Baptist. Herod may have been trying to protect him. She says, let's get rid of him. He can't say any bad things about us anymore. So we have this dance in praise of God that's looked on askance. And we have this dance of this innocent at the behest of an arrogant ruler that results in the death of a prophet. It's just intriguing to me. Did the lectionary writers really mean to put these two texts together? And what are the questions for us? Well, on the one side, I wondered this week, when was the last time that I made such a fool of myself? That someone would look askance at me for the sake of doing a godly thing? I'm very concerned with propriety. I'm very concerned with looking good on the outside. Rarely can I think of a time when I made a fool of myself in praise of God's goodness in my life. Rarely would I put my reputation on the line in order that someone would know of God's almighty acts, God's extravagant love, God's grace to me. On the other side, I'm full of dancing with the powers. I'm full of keeping things the way they ought to be. I can think of 3 instances. See if these relate to you. First of all, as soon as someone calls race, you know what I say? Well, that's not me. Well, I'm not a racist. And yet, when you look very closely, we are all, except for one person in this room, recipients of white privilege. What we've been given by virtue of our skin tone is mostly unearned. And rather than hurt the white people's feelings, heaven forbid we should be put in that category of racist, we will deny that this is a racist culture. I'm always dancing with the powers. I have a hard time even seeing where I'm a racist. That's one example. The second example has to do with taxes. I don't want higher taxes. Lord knows we pay enough in taxes. Am I right? Can I get an amen? And yet, what comes out of our taxes? All our services, our military, our educational opportunities, right? So I would rather pay less taxes and have less money available for those services, which, as we know, when there's less money available, who gets hit? in a way that's out of proportion to the rest of us? The poor, right? Services to the inner city are slower. Education in urban areas is deficient. I'm always dancing with the powers. I always want to protect my own financial situation, even though I've got way more than what I need. And the third example I heard about at General Synod, and I want to share this with you. Winona LaDuke, a first American activist, environmentalist, economist, and writer, is known internationally for her work on tribal land claims and preservation. She spoke to us as a keynote one day. She's the co-founder of Honor the Earth, a national advocacy group encouraging public support for Native environmental groups. She reminded us of our dance with fossil fuels. She says, we've had a good time while it lasted. She compared it to an addiction because now, rather than changing the dance to save our planet, we're willing to go to extreme measures to keep that drug filling our veins. Extreme extraction that actually cause earthquakes and groundwater poisoning. You know what I'm talking about, fracking. She says, we'd rather hang on to our drug dealers being the oil companies, than get well. She reported that food travels an average of 1,400 miles from farm to table. And ancient corns that the first Americans grew, 800 varieties, are drought and frost resistant. And then, on a lighthearted note, she said, you don't need a shrink if you have a wood pile. Right? I know, it takes a minute to sink in. Are we dancing with the devil? Instead of dancing before the God of creation, destroying our earth and resources and ultimately ourselves? We, as God's people, are fortunate to know that our security, our well-being is in God's hands. We have nothing to fear. We can dance with the darker-skinned person in a rainbow of color advocating for justice. We can throw our discretionary income to the wind, so to speak, as we dance with the poor, struggling to make ends meet. We can sing songs of peace and justice, giving up the need to protect our security so that all will feel safe and secure. I'm always looking, when I prepare a sermon like this, for affirmation. I'm always afraid that it's my agenda that gets in the way. I found this wonderful blog this week by Steve Garnis Holmes. He writes in his blog, Unfolding Light. I'm going to end with this quote. 2 dances. One soaked in depravity yet praised. The other, an honest act of prayer yet scorned. One is entangled in secret desires and schemes, in bitterness and revenge. The other is free and simple. One dancer reveals too much joy, too much of himself. The other reveals too much fear, too much of the palace's corruption. One dance is caught up in calculations for getting what one wants. The other, pure gift, One is designed to please others. The other is offered without regard to what others think. One is a coin passed through many hands. The other a song sung once. And here's the rub. The one that becomes murderous is the one that fits in, that follows the rules, that functions as an acceptable tool of those in power. It's the dance of the system. The one that is pure worship, the dance of the heart, becomes a scandal. He concludes, pure love never fits in. It exposes us, makes us look foolish. It comes from a place where who we are, our naked self, is lovely and offered without reservation. It breaks rules. It often evokes resistance. Fitting in to get what we want is often being used by someone else for what they want. He says, you're going to dance. The question is not whether or how, it's why. May God give us all good reason and courage to dance. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.